There is a quiet moment in life when the weight in your chest shifts, when the rope you've been gripping slowly unravels from your hands, and you let someone go. Not in rage, not in revenge, but in a deep and steady clarity. You stop holding on, not just to the person, but to the craving, the story, the imagined future. You feel the absence, yes, but more than that, you meet yourself again. Letting go is not weakness. It is not surrender in defeat. It is a quiet act of courage, a rite of passage for the soul. Something begins to rearrange inside you the moment the decision is made, like the architecture of your spirit is shifting into a new form. What was scattered starts to gather. What was broken begins to knit itself together. And though nothing may look different from the outside, in the depths of your being, a silent revolution begins. It doesn't arrive with fireworks. It begins in the dark, where all true transformation is born. At first, it might feel like exhaustion, a bone-deep tiredness from carrying the hope that one day you would be seen, understood, cherished in a place that has always denied you that. And then, somewhere in the stillness, you whisper to yourself, enough. Not with venom, but with truth. That's when the shift happens. On the surface, it looks like the end of a chapter, but deep inside, it is the first page of your liberation. Because in that surrender, you finally face the truth you've been resisting. You never had control. You could not will someone into closeness, could not bend their heart into love. All you could do was contort yourself, dilute your truth, give more than you had, in the hope that enough giving would make you worthy. But the cost of that hope was yourself. You wore the mask, not because you wanted to deceive, but because it was the only way to stay close to what you longed for. You softened your edges, muted your voice, made your depths easier to swallow. Yet, beneath it all, your true self waited. It waited for the day you would no longer mistake attachment for love. When you finally loosen your grip, the illusion shatters. The ego can no longer whisper that you might earn what should be freely given. You stop bargaining with your worth. You stop trying to coax tenderness from indifference. You stop performing. The mask falls, and in its place comes a stillness, like the air after a storm, when the sky clears and you can finally see. In that stillness, something dies, but it is not you. It is the false self, the one who believed love was proof of value, the one who lived in the waiting room of someone else's affection. That death hurts, but it is sacred. Without it, your truest self cannot rise. Without it, you remain bound to the endless reaching for what will never arrive. When the performance ends, you may feel a strange emptiness. The role you've been playing is gone. But this is not a void. It is open ground, a sacred space where your roots can reach deeper than they ever have before. You no longer shrink to avoid loss. You no longer carry a love that asks you to vanish. You no longer negotiate your soul for crumbs of connection. And though the world may see it as loss, your soul knows better. Something false has fallen away, and in its place, something real has begun. You stop searching for yourself in someone else's gaze and find your reflection within, whole, unbroken, undeniable. And from there, life will never be the same. You may still ache for them. You may still feel the pull of longing, but these feelings no longer bind you. They pass through like weather, here for a moment, gone the next. Beneath the rise and fall of emotion, something steadier has taken root. A quiet center, a trust so deep that you know, without question, you are no longer living at the mercy of another's ability or inability to love you. This is where real freedom begins. When the illusion of control dissolves, when you stop gripping what your soul no longer needs to hold, something else starts to surface. It isn't always gentle. It rarely feels like relief at first. Instead, it comes with a weight. Old wounds stir. Memories you thought were buried drift upward, like smoke seeping from cracks in the floor. Anger flares, confusion follows, sorrow wraps itself around you, and you wonder if letting go was the right choice. Why does the pain feel sharper now? It's because letting go is never just about the other person. It is about coming face to face with everything you once used them to avoid. The bond you clung to didn't just hold your love, it sheltered your wounds. As long as you were focused on them, you could keep certain parts of yourself hidden. But when the relationship breaks, the container shatters. Everything you kept locked inside spills into the light. This flood is not your punishment. It is the shadow, the silenced part of you that has been waiting for its turn to speak. It is every abandonment you didn't have space to feel, every moment you weren't enough for someone you loved, every piece of yourself you softened so you wouldn't be too much. And now, with no one left to appease, your soul calls it all forward. It can be disorienting. It can feel like you're going backward, but you're not regressing. You're descending. You're stepping into the rooms of your own being you've avoided for years. You are not unraveling. You are meeting yourself. You are not drowning. You are learning to hear what your pain has been trying to say. These wounds do not come to break you again. They rise for integration. You cannot reclaim your wholeness by continuing to exile the pieces that were hurt. When someone cannot see your worth, the first question is often, why didn't they? But buried beneath that is the more important question, why have I not fully claimed it myself? This is why the shadow returns, to show you the parts of you still waiting to be welcomed home. You might feel shame. You might feel rage. You might feel grief so raw it steals your breath, especially if you've spent years shrinking yourself to keep the peace. But this is not the time to turn away. This is the time to stay. In the quiet, you may hear the truth you've been waiting for. I'm tired of pretending. I deserve to be held without earning it. I am worthy, even in my anger, my sadness, my fear. This is the real work. The slow, unglamorous kind. It doesn't look like enlightenment, but it lays the ground for it. Every part of you that rises in the silence, left by their absence, is a part that longs to belong to you again. This isn't about blame. It's about turning toward yourself with the same devotion you once poured into them. And when you tend to these exiled parts, patiently, honestly, without abandoning yourself this time, the pain doesn't vanish, but it changes. It sharpens into meaning. You begin to see what was always true. The grief was never just about losing them. It was about finding the parts of you you'd forgotten you had. It was never only about them. It was about the distance you had from yourself, the silence you carried, the forgetting of who you were before you began shrinking to fit into someone else's world. And when you finally stop chasing what could never truly nourish you, you make room to remember. You remember your voice, strong and unshaken. You remember your boundaries, once blurred, now clear. You remember that your feelings are not too much. They are signals, guiding you toward what matters. You remember you were never meant to fold yourself smaller, just to be allowed to stay. What rises after letting go isn't only grief. It's power, raw, unpolished, alive, demanding to be lived. The shadow that surfaces now is not a threat, it is simply truth that has been living too long in the dark. And it is not here to undo you, it is here to restore you. This is how the soul returns home, by reclaiming what it once hid. And as the shadow comes forward, another shift begins, the slow dissolving of projections. These are not just simple misunderstandings or quick judgments. They are deeper unconscious assignments, qualities, virtues, even flaws we place on another person to match our unspoken needs, fears, and longings. In love, we sometimes crown someone with what we think we lack, giving them the role of savior, healer, or even villain, weaving them into the story of our unfinished wounds. When you let go, those projections begin to fade. The person who once seemed to hold the key to your happiness, your worth, your very sense of self, starts to return to their true size. Not a mirror for your unhealed places, but simply a human being, separate from your inner world. They are no longer the source of your self-esteem, nor the author of your joy or pain. This is the quiet beginning of a spiritual awakening. You see more clearly that neither your life nor theirs revolves around each other. And while that truth can feel disorienting, because for so long, part of who you were was defined through their eyes, it also opens a door. Without their gaze, who are you? Without their approval, without their criticism, without their version of your worth, what remains? In that open space, something honest begins to rise. You start to see yourself without the lens of performance, without the shape you molded yourself into for the sake of being loved. The dissolving of projections loosens the ego's grip. The desperate need to be loved in one specific way starts to fall away. You begin to realize that the love you've been chasing cannot be given to you by anyone else. It has always been yours to give. And with that, the truth comes into focus. No one can complete you. No one can fill the hollow spaces you once projected onto them. The wholeness you've been searching for was never out there. It was waiting inside you, beneath the layers of longing and illusion. Letting go becomes more than an ending. It becomes the turning inward, the quiet uncovering of your own missing pieces, the discovery that you never needed another to define who you are. When the projections dissolve, you begin to stand on your own ground, no longer tethered to the belief that your worth depends on someone else's gaze. The image you once clung to fades, and the person before you is no longer a savior, no longer a villain, no longer the keeper of your value. They are simply another human, imperfect, layered, carrying their own struggles and quiet joys. This shift allows you to release the fantasy you once wrapped around them and accept them as they are, flawed, complex, and not responsible for carrying the weight of your heart. In that acceptance, peace begins to take root. You see, perhaps for the first time, that your value was never bound to their choices, and in seeing them clearly, you finally see yourself clearly too. What follows is not cold detachment, but a gentler relationship with yourself. Without the constant pull of projecting your unhealed needs outward, space opens for a purer kind of self-love to grow. Not the kind that feeds the ego, but the kind born from recognizing your own fragility and your own strength. The kind that knows you are enough, not because you've earned it, not because you've been perfect, but simply because you exist. From here, forgiveness may come, not necessarily for their actions, but for your own. You forgive yourself for believing someone else could give you what only you could give yourself. You forgive yourself for holding on to hope that they could become something they were never able to be. You forgive yourself for thinking you needed them to be different in order to feel whole. And with that forgiveness comes a lightness. You release them from the role they never agreed to play. You release yourself from the endless performance you thought you had to maintain. When the projections are gone, so is the heaviness that lived in your chest for so long. What remains is freedom, the freedom to live as you truly are, without begging the world to reflect your worth back to you. In this freedom, a stillness emerges. It may feel strange at first, an almost unsettling pause where the noise used to be. But if you stay with it, you notice something rising quietly beneath the surface, the presence of your deeper self. This is the turning point, the soul shifting back into alignment. Letting go was never only about releasing the other person. It was about returning to the place in yourself you had abandoned. In relationships, it's easy to lose that center, so focused on being seen, heard, and loved that you forget the quiet hum that has always been there beneath it all. When you finally let go, that hum becomes audible again. It's the voice that doesn't demand you to prove anything, the voice that doesn't need you to twist yourself to fit someone else's world. It speaks in whispers of balance, peace, and truth. And when you hear it, the relief is almost startling, like exhaling after years of holding your breath, the ache of waiting, the strain of pleasing, the constant need to prove your worth. It all loosens its grip. For the first time in a long time, you feel at home in your own skin. Your worth was never in their recognition. It was never in their approval. It was always here, in you, waiting to be claimed. This is the return to your true self, the part of you that stands whole, unshaken, and free, without needing anyone else to tell you it's so. It doesn't need to be witnessed, validated, or measured in the way you once thought it did. Your deeper self has always been whole, complete in its own right, before the relationship, during it, and long after it fades. This self does not contract to fit another's world. It expands, breathing fully only when you stop searching outside yourself for the missing pieces and begin to look inward. When you do, the haze lifts. For the first time, you see yourself, not as an extension of someone else's hopes or demands, but as a being with your own desires, your own path, your own unshakable worth. This awakening isn't about perfection. It's not the absence of flaws. It's the embrace of them, the recognition that both your light and your shadow are part of the same whole. You are enough, not because of what you accomplish, not because of how well you meet another's needs, but because you are. This truth doesn't roar. It settles into you like still water, bringing a calm that no one else can give or take away. The outer world may remain restless, people may drift in and out of your life, but you stay rooted. Your sense of peace no longer depends on another person's affection or approval. This is what spiritual alignment feels like. Not chasing, not striving, but listening to the quiet voice within. The love you searched for in someone else becomes your own, and from it grows a gentle, unshakable inner peace. From here, something even greater emerges, a felt connection to the pulse of life itself. You begin to see the threads linking you to everything around you. The need to control outcomes fades, replaced by trust. Trust in the timing of your life. Trust that what is meant for you will find its way. This trust is not born of passivity, but of deep alignment with your own essence. You see, too, that every difficulty, every heartbreak, every detour was not a misstep, but a necessary part of your unfolding. Pain was not punishment. It was the catalyst for coming home to yourself. Letting go doesn't cause a sudden transformation. It clears the space for one. And in that space, the deeper self begins to rise, sometimes subtly, sometimes in ways that shift everything. In the quiet that follows release, you discover that what you feared would be emptiness is, in truth, fullness. It is the presence of your own soul, unfragmented, waiting to guide you forward. This is the homecoming, not to a place, not to another person, but to the you that you always were. And with that return comes strength, not the brittle kind that depends on being seen as strong, but the quiet, grounded kind that grows from knowing your own worth. In past relationships, you may have softened your voice, bent your boundaries, reshaped yourself to fit a space that did not honor you. That quiet erosion may have been so gradual, you barely noticed it, until the moment you let go. Then the shift begins. Not as an act of rebellion, but as a remembering. You no longer negotiate away your needs to keep someone else comfortable. You no longer abandon yourself in the name of connection. You reclaim your place in your own life, and in that reclamation is the deepest renewal, a strength that does not need applause, a worth that does not need proof, and a love that begins and ends within you. There is no more bargaining with your own existence, no more twisting yourself into smaller, safer shapes to fit into the narrow outlines of someone else's vision for you. The moment you truly let go, you stop seeking permission to take up space. You stop waiting for someone else to validate your right to be exactly who you are, Instead, you simply inhabit yourself, and in that simple act, no performance, no proving, there is a quiet, unshakable power. This strength is not a show of force. It doesn't come from defiance, revenge, or the will to win. It comes from remembering that who you are at your core cannot be touched, diminished, or erased. No matter how much you bent, gave, or tried to appease, your essence remained whole. You cannot lose yourself. You can only forget. Letting go is the moment of remembering. It's the silence after the storm where you can hear your own voice again, unmuted by the static of trying to belong to someone else's world. And in that voice, you find dignity, not arrogance, not superiority, but the solid truth of your own worth. Dignity is knowing you have always been valuable, even when others failed to see it. From here, you stop begging for recognition. You stop shrinking to fit. You start honoring yourself, your boundaries, your desires, your need for space. You stop apologizing for existing in your own fullness. This isn't about becoming harder. It's about becoming real. And the beauty is, you don't have to rush or force it. The strength you tap into now rises naturally from within, steady and grounded like a deep root that's been there all along. This strength isn't the frantic kind that burns out in battle. It's the quiet resilience that lets you meet life on your terms. It's the courage to say no when no is needed, and yes to yourself even when it costs you the comfort of someone else's approval. It's not rebellion, it's self-respect. And that self-respect becomes the spiritual bedrock of your life. In reclaiming your power, you also reclaim your autonomy. You stop living according to someone else's story about who you should be. You begin to write your own, guided not by fear of losing love, but by the truth of what aligns with you. You are no longer fractured by another's presence or absence. You become whole in your own presence. From this wholeness, you move with clarity, peace, and confidence. You stop chasing the love, worth, and belonging you thought existed outside of you, and realize they have always been here, quietly waiting for you to notice. The spiritual strength you gain from letting go isn't about control. It's about peace. Peace with who you are, what you've lived through, and the path unfolding ahead. And in that peace, you find the power you were always meant to live from. Not borrowed, not given, but wholly your own. When you choose to let go of someone who no longer values you, something begins to stir in the quiet chambers of your soul. It's not loud. It doesn't happen in a dramatic flash. Instead, it feels like a slow, steady turning inward, as if the absence of that person creates enough space for you to finally hear yourself again. At first, it can feel empty, even disorienting, because for so long your attention has been tethered to their approval, their moods, their presence. But in that stillness, you begin to notice something extraordinary, the vastness of your own inner world. It's as if you've been walking past a locked door your whole life, and now, for the first time, you hold the key. Letting go becomes more than an act of separation. It becomes an act of reclamation. You begin to sense the quiet pull of your true purpose, something deeper than any single relationship, something that was never dependent on being seen or validated by another. This is a recalibration, not just of the mind, but of the heart and the spirit. It's the moment you remember that you belong, not because someone else chooses you, but because you are already woven into the fabric of life itself. When we stay connected to someone who cannot or will not value us, we lose sight of our own inner compass. We start navigating by their reactions, their acceptance, their recognition. But the truth is, you were never meant to live by someone else's coordinates. The path has always been within you, quietly waiting for the day you would turn back toward it. And now, in the absence of their hold, you feel it again. The steady, unwavering pull of your own life calling you home. And in that peace, you find the power you were always meant to live from. Not borrowed, not given, but wholly your own. When you choose to let go of someone who no longer values you, something begins to stir in the quiet chambers of your soul. It's not loud. It doesn't happen in a dramatic flash. Instead, it feels like a slow, steady turning inward, as if the absence of that person creates enough space for you to finally hear yourself again. At first, it can feel empty, even disorienting, because for so long your attention has been tethered to their approval, their moods, their presence. But in that stillness, you begin to notice something extraordinary, the vastness of your own inner world. It's as if you've been walking past a locked door your whole life, and now, for the first time, you hold the key. Letting go becomes more than an act of separation. It becomes an act of reclamation. You begin to sense the quiet pull of your true purpose, something deeper than any single relationship, something that was never dependent on being seen or validated by another. This is a recalibration, not just of the mind, but of the heart and the spirit. It's the moment you remember that you belong, not because someone else chooses you, but because you are already woven into the fabric of life itself. When we stay connected to someone who cannot or will not value us, we lose sight of our own inner compass. We start navigating by their reactions, their acceptance, their recognition. But the truth is, you were never meant to live by someone else's coordinates. The path has always been within you, quietly waiting for the day you would turn back toward it. And now, in the absence of their hold, you feel it again. The steady, unwavering pull of your own life calling you home.